get your API key, if you're just getting started, which I want to assume that a lot of people here are just getting started, like you've not created any project at all on this on Google's AI Studio. So the first thing that you do when you come here, you click on Get API Key. Now it says select a project from an existing. You can either create a new project or you select a project from an existing project that is already existing. If you want to create a new project, you go to create new. But in this case, I'm going to click, when you just go to the middle, like you tap in, it will list out all the projects that you currently have. So for me now, I have like 4 projects already. I have not I have like projects that I've created before now, so like my nurse school notification, Firebase and all of that and all of that. And I'm going to make use of this last one, which is generative language clients. Now, when I click on it and then I click on create an API key, is anybody following me? I just hope that you're following me. Create an API key. When you click on, I'm not going to click on it. I already have API keys, like so I don't create any other one. So just click on create an API key. When you create an API key, copy, you'd see a place for copy the API key. Okay, I'll just proceed with that. All right, great. So this is my, now your API key is a secret key for developers. I'm sure you already know that your API is your API details are very, 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 very delicate. You have to always hide them, and that is why we'll always be hiding our API key. Now, like I said, I'm going to be working thoroughly with the web, and I'm sure that the next speaker is going to handle other parts of the Android and other aspects. So you copy your API key. Like I always say, go to your Google Docs, create a new document, and it doesn't have to be a Google Docs, sha. It can be any document, your notepad, whatever. Just keep it there. Just keep it there. So we've done that. Now the next thing that we are going to do is to, let's look at our what I wrote down here. We've kept our API key. All right, great. So we go back. We've copied our API key. Then we go back to the initial documentation, which is the AI. Don't forget, the initial documentation is ai.google.dev. The moment you get there, click on the API docs. It takes you to it brings you here. Like, so if you're with your laptop, I want to emphasize, if you're with your laptop, it would be great that you follow me so you can see what I am doing. I know that I have 25 minutes, but I don't know how many minutes I've taken so far. Maybe 10, 15, I'm not sure. Okay, so for this particular one, we're going to call our API. Coiling, that's like your client URL. Basically, um, want to verify that what we have kept is correct. Before we coil it, just watch me. I'm going to edit my API key and I'll paste it. So this is mine. You create yours. Every user has every projects can have like multiple API keys, and no API key is similar, like the same. You can't have a similar API key with mine. So I just copy. Like I said, I want to coil it. If you're using a terminal, a Mac, you use your terminal. If you're using a Windows, you use your command line. Okay. I'll just create one. All right, great. So I just did that now. So just to verify my details. So this just gives me the contents of my API, give me 5 subcategories of jazz, blah blah blah. It gave me the subcategories of jazz and their probability and all of that. The question I asked, also with the data that I imputed into it. That aside, we've done that. Just like I said, it's just to check that everything is in order. And if you read through, please read through. It really emphasizing on how secure your API keys should be. It is very, very critical because there can be a lot of hacking just by your API key, a lot of injecting, a lot of things can be done by just exposing your keys, your data, to like exposing it unnecessarily. And I'll show you how to thoroughly like really keep your data. So like I mentioned earlier, you could go through the Gemini API stats and all of that. Like I said, we'll be using the web, which is the node.js and the web. That's for this session. We'll be using node.js and web. The first thing the first thing we're going to do is to install the first thing. Ensure to read the documentation very well. It's very important. The first thing you need to do is to install your Google Generative AI. Now, I'm using Vite. If you're a web developer, I'm sure you know Vite already. So I've already created my project because I know I will not be able to code here. I know it will take a lot of time. So the first thing that we'll do is you create a .env file and you put your install Vite first. Like the first thing you're doing is to install Vite. When you create your project in your terminal, MK like before even creating your project, where you usually keep your code projects, you install Vite. I think it's npm create Vite latest, something like that. Then you install your Vite, and when you install your Vite, you create a new document and you do all of that, and it sets your project up for you. Because we're using vanilla JS, I created one with React, but just to make it very easy so that everybody can flow. I don't know what every other person is using. Some people are not using React, some people are using here. So I'm sure that almost everybody is familiar with JavaScript. So I just use Vite to simplify our process and to give us other the package JSON and other things we'd need. But I'm using pure vanilla JS. You create your .env file and you save you create a .env file, you name it Vite API key, and you put in your API key. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is to install your what I just install your Google Generative AI. Reason you're using your Google Generative AI because that's what you'll be using throughout your projects. When you install your Google Generative AI, you import it into your main.js. In your main.js file, which you would get when you use Vite, you can use pure JavaScript. If you're using pure JavaScript, you have to create a node.js file. Like if you're using HTML and CSS and JavaScript without you're not using Vite and anything, it will still work perfectly. You have to just create a node.js file where you can like keep other things that you would need, like where you can put your server directions, like where you can redirect your server and all of that. You need to create a node.js. That's like a server.js inside, if you're using just straight, you're not using Vite, you're not using a framework, nothing like that, which works perfectly as well. The first thing is that you have to import your Google Generative AI. Like I said, you use it throughout your project. And remember that we already saved our key. We already saved I put it here initially, but it's a very long. We already saved our key in our .env file. So all I need to do is to import it here. So I just call it here .env file .env the name of my the name I saved my API key as in my .env file, and then I create a variable, a constant here, and then I proceed. Now, to make use of the API that I have, the API key and my Google Generative AI, which I already installed, I have to create a new Google Generative AI. It's like you're creating a new model. When you import a model, you have to create a new model. That's what you're doing now. So you've imported like the package, the Google Generative AI. Now you have to create a new model. So a new Google Generative AI and then the API key. So I forgot to the everything I see here, every single thing. I didn't write it by myself. I'll show you. Even this line where you can see new Google Generative AI, blah blah blah. It's all in the documentation. So there's little to no code that you're writing. So after you've installed this, the place I was showing you just now about creating a new generative AI, like I said, I didn't write it myself. It's already here. You just copy this and you paste. Now, now for your
Buchi.
uh, okay, I do not
Yeah.
have time. Okay, how
Yes, we're
many
already
minutes
out.
more do I have? Okay, so I'll just round
Less
up
than
in 5
1 minute.
minutes. All right,
In,
great.
so we have just 1 minute, so we can have our second speaker come in.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can use that 1 minute for Q&A. I don't know if anyone
No,
has a
no, no. I have
question.
no. I'll just wrap up from here. Just give me in a few minutes, maybe 2 3 minutes. I'll wrap up. So
I can only give you 1 minute, so we can have our second speaker come in.
okay,
Yes.
okay. Okay. So for the models, when using your models, there are different kinds of models. There's the Gemini Pro Vision. There's the Gemini Pro. There are like lots of models that you can use. Particular one I used the Gemini Pro, and you can read more about the models. There are different models. The popular ones are the Gemini Pro and Pro Vision models. So basically, like I already explained, you just copy it and you paste. I didn't write the code. The only code I wrote was my handle submit. That's like when creating my handle submit, and then you come over here as well, and you come over here. You also copy. This is the function that wants your prompt. Now, this, for instance, this is your const prompt. Here it is written manually, like it is static data. But when you are using it in your own, you first test it with this to be sure that it's working. By the time you're done, you have to make it a parameter. So you have to input it into your run. You can name this run anything. So instead of making it const prompt in const this, you put it here. Like this prompt will be a parameter. So you can use it everywhere and it becomes dynamic because it's the prompt is what you're asking. You're asking your you're asking your model. So you also come here and this basically there are different kinds of there are different kinds of
I'm sorry,
input.
Bushi, but we'll have to bring it to an end right now.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so
Thank you.
lastly, let me just show them the final results of what can. So basically, this is like if not really a final result because it is not styled, but yeah. So I'll just ask. You can just ask a question. Let me say, um, so if I say, for instance, okay, I think I need to run my code.
Okay, I think that's going to take a
All
while.
right.
I guess we'll have another session so we can do that so that we can have Saga come in.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you so
Please, you can
much.
proceed. You can proceed. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if you have questions, you can drop your questions in the chat for Bushi. And so because of time, we would need to bring Saga in to take over. So Saga is our second speaker, and Saga is a machine learning engineer as well as a Google developer expert for Android. And I would like us to put down our notes, get your questions ready, because I believe Saga is ready to answer all of our questions. So Saga, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And that was a great session, Bushi. So that actually laid down the foundation for what I'm going to present. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. So go ahead and present my entire screen. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Perfect. So, hello, folks. Thank you for joining my talk today. We'll be talking about building with AI. As Bushi was mentioning, like AI is the buzzword, and then we do not need to introduce the term itself. Everyone knows what AI means and what scope it holds. So, I'm going to talk about how we can leverage AI within Android app development. and some of the basics of prompt engineering and all of those stuff. So the first question, what makes me eligible to talk about this topic and who am I? Well, folks, I'm Sagar. I'm a staff Android engineer working at Vivint Smart Home. I live in Boston. For folks who are curious what Vivint Smart Home is, it's more of like an IoT company where we sell smart hardware like doorbell cameras, garage door, and everything, and you can control everything from a mobile app. I have been building Android apps for more than 10 years now. I used to do my fair share of AI and machine learning algorithms as well, but now we are living in the world where almost every single engineer has to learn some aspects of AI and machine learning development. So exciting times. I love public speaking. I have given multiple talks in DroidCon and other state level conferences here in the US. I'm a Google developer expert and I'm also a Google developer organizer for Boston. So the very first question which I always get asked by my community members in Boston. So Boston has a lot of students and a lot of professionals. And the first question they ask me is, will AI replace Android developers? Which is definitely something that we need to consider. But for now, the answer is definitely no. And it all starts with a change in your mind shift. So we need to start treating AI as an assistant and not as a replacement. The very moment when we start treating AI as an assistant, we understand its potential. We understand that it is here to help and accelerate our capabilities and our talent so that we would be able to perform better in our jobs. It's mostly like, back in the 1900s, there was the industrial revolution, and people were afraid that factories are going to take away manual labor and all of those jobs. But eventually, human civilization learned how to operate machines, and they upgraded their skills, and they found new jobs. So similarly, we are in an interesting cusp of revolution where every single software engineer needs to invest some of their time in learning some of the basic A and ML skills in order to stay relevant and stay ahead of the curve. Analytical and predictive AI has been around for almost a decade now with Google Maps and all of those things. They have been helping us out and optimizing the way how we interact with technology in our day-to-day life. It is accelerating research in field of biology and healthcare. My wife is a data scientist working in Moderna, so she always keeps on talking about how they are leveraging AI in all of their research methodologies, whether in creating new medicines or protein structure sequence and all of those things. So exciting times over there as well. So ultimately, it comes down to the fact which I started a couple of slides earlier. Like ultimately, AI is here to help businesses, people, and community to achieve their true potential and accelerate their growth and their career. Now, so that brings us to an interesting topic. So, which is the next big skill to build as an engineer? And that's prompt engineering. So, what is prompt engineering? Now, in simple terms, I can say it as it's a science and art of crafting those sentences which you will be using to interact with the machine learning model. So ultimately, it's just like a user interface, like the different interfaces we have. We have the command line interface, we have the graphical interface, we have the touch interface on our smartphones and our tablets. So it's just a doorway or an interface how we interact with a machine. And we interact with machine learning models or AI through sentences, English sentences, or other languages as well. And all of those components of the languages are called prompts. So there is also another term which is associated with all of these generative AI, and that's LLM. So what does LLM stand for? It starts for large language model. So essentially, a large language model breaks up a sentence into different tokens, or in other words, prompts. Like the cat sat on the table, or the mat, or the rug, or chair. So we provide all of these tokens as input to an LLM, and then the LLM takes upon this in sentence, break this up into tokens, and then generates the next word, like the cat sat on the maybe a mat, a rug, or chair, or something like that. Now, LLMs are specially used for knowledge generation and reasoning. With ever since the rise of ChatGPT since 2022, the entire world has been experiencing the power and potential of LLM in almost every field. So they are good in completing sentences, discovering knowledge. If you have like an entire textbook full of chapters and chapters, you can use LLMs to train and provide you specific information and all of those things. Uh, LLMs can also be used for multimodality. What that means is you can use it to analyze images alongside text as well. Um, so this slide also talks about the prompt engineering fundamentals or the prompt design. Basically, the same thing which I said earlier. Like it's the art and science of providing those sentences to your machine learning model. Or in other words, we can say it as like prompts are the instructions which allow you to enforce those rules, automate processes, and ensure specific qualities. More of like a technical definition if people are more interested for that. So there are certain guidelines if you want to start investing yourself in building those prompts. So all of your prompts need to be clear and specific. You need to provide a clear context, and all of those needs to have a task-oriented approach, meaning there should be a clear goal on what you need to achieve. And you can also provide examples and references. And number fifth is iteration. You successively build upon your prompts in order to make the quality of your AI model better and better. So this slide gives some examples, like you can ask a question, what's a good name for a flower shop that specializes in bouquets and all of those things. You can provide some context, you can provide some examples and all of those things. So the trick over here is try to build your AI experience layer by layer, allow the user to ask question number one, followed by question number two, and then question number three, where the user can provide their own examples, set context, and all of those things. Now, Google has been pioneering AI-related development for the last decade. They started with Transformer in 2017. In 2018, they launched BERT, followed by AlphaFold, then T5, Lambda, and Palm, and then now recently, what we know it as Bard or Gemini. Previously, it was Bard when they launched it in 2023, but then they very soon renamed it to Gemini. So all of their AI-related products is now rebranded as Gemini. Here's the link to Gemini. I would not be saying that Buchi did an excellent job in showing the basics of Gemini.google.com, and so you guys can try it out yourselves. Now, how can you use AI for Android app development? Now, with all of the AI-related boom going on, Android app development holds no exception. You can use generative AI for auto-completing code sentences. You can use it to identify bottlenecks and errors. You can also use AI to build specific user-related experiences, which we will be seeing in the workshop in a short moment. So the list of possibilities are endless, but for the purpose of this talk, we would be looking at a very specific purpose, and that would be building a user experience using Gemini API using Android app. Now, for folks who are not familiar with Android, I'm pretty sure everyone in this room is familiar what Android is, but folks who are not familiar with it, it's one of the world's most operating system, especially. So I live in US now, but I'm from India, and Android is huge in Europe and Asia and rest of the world. But here in US, it's mostly iOS over Android, but then Android is like globally dominant elsewhere. So it powers billions of devices, it brings people together and all of those things. Now, for people who are not familiar with Android app components, now each Android app out there, look, no, there are billions of apps in Play Store, but you take any app and then that app would be having four components. The number one component is called activity, second is called service, third is called content provider, and the last one is called broadcast receiver. So what is an activity? Now, activity is the actual screen which you will be seeing in your app. It can be a music app, it can be an email app, a particular screen in the app is called activity. Maybe you are building a login screen, maybe you are building a settings page or an email composition screen. In this example, in the screenshot, it's a music player app. Now, service is the functionality of the app which is not visible to the user. So let's say you are downloading a file in your browser and then you minimize the app, but the download content keeps continuing in the background. So that is called a service. Or you are playing your music in your smartphone and then you minimize it and it keeps running in the background. So it does not require the user to keep communicating with it repeatedly. Now, what is the official ID which we use for Android app development? That's Android Studio. So Android Studio has 3 different flavors which you can use for your development. So the first one is stable, the second one is beta, and the third is canary or the preview version. So for the purpose of this talk, we would be using the preview version. Now, anyone who is interested, they can head out to this link. I'll remove this. Hold on. Yes, so developer.android.com/studio. And then over here, you need to go to the preview tab. So I'm already on the preview tab, okay. And then you click on download Android Studio Iguana. Oh, is it loading? Just give me a moment. Let me refresh the screen. Okay, yep. And you click on the preview tab and then you would be downloading either of these. Like you can download Jellyfish or Koala. Now, what is the official language which we use for Android app development? So that's Kotlin. That is similar to Java. It is the official language for Android development since 2017 or 2018. And ever since that, every Android developer out there is using Kotlin. Very few people are using Java. You can still use Java, but I would recommend to use Kotlin. Now, so let's get started with the hands-on and let's see how we can integrate Gemini API with our Android app. So I have already downloaded the Android Studio preview version in my system so that it becomes quick for us. Now, once you have downloaded, the very first thing which we need to do is create a new project. So how do we do that? We go to File, we go to New Project, and here we have to select Gemini API Starter. Now, once you select that, click on Next. You provide a name for your app. So it can be, let's say, sample app. And then you select the package name, which is just similar to like a package structure for any programming language. You decide the directory, and then you provide the minimum SDK. Now, the minimum SDK is the Android version which you are targeting. So there are different versions of Android, Oreo, Pi, Q, and all of those things. And then you click on Next. Now here you would be generating an API key with Google AI Studio. So again, Buchi did an excellent job in like showing how to generate this API key. But just as a refresher for memory, you head out to aistudio.google.com and then /app and API key. You follow the instructions on this page and you generate an API key. And you come back to Android Studio, you paste it over here and you click on Finish and we'll create a project. I have already created a project so that it would be fast for us to learn. Now, once you have created the project, you would be seeing a bunch of files in your Android Studio. So let's quickly go through what all important files we need to focus for now. Now over here, you would be seeing an app module, and then you expand the Kotlin folder, and you would be seeing a package. For here, I have created AI for Warri, and then you would be seeing baking screen, baking view model, main activity. We just now learned that activity is the actual screen. So this would be the actual screen which we would be displaying to the user. And then baking screen contains all of the UI elements. And then if you expand further, you would be seeing a bunch of other files as well. You would be seeing color, which is nothing but the color of the UI components. You would be seeing the theme. The type is the type of font or the typography which you want to show to the user. And then all of these files are build related files. For the purpose of this talk, we will not be discussing this. It tends to become more complicated. We'll be keeping it short and simple, like focusing on AI. So The very first thing which we want to do is launch this app and see how it looks in our uh, smartphones. So how do we do that? There are different ways how you can launch an app in Android Studio. So the first way is you can go to the run option over here, and then you click on run app, or you click on display button over here. It says run app. Now over here, you would be seeing something which shows a list of devices which is attached to your computer. For me, right now, I'm running a Google Pixel 8. I have already connected to it, so that's why it shows Google Pixel 8. You can also use other emulators. If you're not having a real device, Android Studio gives you the capability of creating emulators, so you can launch your app. So let's go ahead and launch this app. Now, how do we see it? Where the magic is happening? So we go to running devices over here. And here it shows my screen of my smartphone. So let me quickly relaunch the app. Yep, I clicked on play and it launches the app. So a very simple app. So what it shows over here is there is a bunch of images and there's a text field and there's a button. Now, by default, if I select on an image and I provide a prompt to the AI model, the Gemini model, provide a recipe for the baked goods in the image, and I click on go. And let's give it a moment. It will be connecting over to the internet and then fetching the responses. And then automatically it provides you all of the information that is needed. Similarly, that you can select different images. So this is what we learned about in the slides about multimodal input. Other than providing images, I can just ask any question to a. I want to ask what is supernova, and I click on go. And then it explains like supernova is a powerful astrophysical explosion that occurs in the stars and all of those things. So people who are interested in space and stuff. Okay. Now, as an engineer, your job is to quickly find out where all of these action is finding going on in the behind the scenes, right? So you're curious as an engineer. So how do we do that in Android Studio in the quickest way possible? So what we do from the running devices window, you see there's something called as toggle layout inspector. So I'm going to click on that. Now let me expand it so that it's clearly visible. Now, once I show the layout inspector, it is showing another window over here which says layout inspector and shows a bunch of component trees. Now this component tree is the UI elements which is being displayed on the screen. So I want to see the code for the go button over here because that is where the magic is happening. I click on go and something happens and I see the result on the screen. So how do I do that? So over here, you would see something called as toggle deep inspect. I click on that and then I click on the go button. It says button. Now immediately over here on the bottom of the screen, it shows me the exact file name and the line number where this is implemented. So I click on that and here, let me hide this thing, and it takes me to baking screen file line number 119, which is the code for the button which we are seeing. And it says go, it says go. So all of these code is written in Kotlin and Jetpack Compose. Jetpack Compose is the new declarative way of coding things for Android. So over here, you can see an on click for the button. So I'm curious, what does this on click do or the on click does? So over here, it is calling something called as baking view model send prompt. And it is taking bitmap, which is the image, and the prompt, which is the text, which we entered in the text field. Now, if I want to go to this particular method and see what is happening, so the shortcut to do that is Command B for MacBook or Control B for Windows. And I do that and it takes us to the view model. And here it says send prompt. And all we are doing is sending an image or a string to the generative model, which is the default Gemini API library, which is provided by Android Studio by default. So there are certain things from a computer science perspective or architecture design perspective which we need to be aware over here. So let's come back to the slides for a moment. Now there were different terms which I used a couple of minutes ago, like view model and button click and states and all of those things. So now there are different architecture patterns as to how you want to organize your code, whether it is Android project, web project, iOS project, or whatever. One of the popular architecture patterns which we use out there as mobile developers is MVVM. It's called model, view, and view model. So what is a model? Model actually stores the data. View displays the data, and view model handles the user input and manages the data. Or in short, you can say view model handles the business operations for your app. Now over here in this sample app which we have, we can see some of the components. So over here we see a view model, which is nothing but the business logic. We are calling the generate content over here, generative model. It is taking input bitmap, which is the image, and prompt, which is the string. And then we are seeing a baking screen, which is the view aspect of the architecture. So this particular file has nothing other than UI, and that's it. So that's why we are now, as a computer science engineer, you can write your logic for making internet calls directly in this baking screen itself, but it is a very bad practice. It would be ending up, this file would end up to become like a huge file down the line. So that's why we have all of these architecture components in order to divide the code logically in our app. So baking screen and then view model. And then we do not have a model in this sample app because we are not saving anything offline. So that is okay, considering that this is a sample app. Now, an interesting thing over here would be, so if you go to this view model, baking view model, and then you see something called as view model scope.launch, and it says dispatches.io. So the question is, why do we do this particular line? Why not directly call generative model dot generate content? You know what? Before I answer that question, let's understand few aspects of the type of operations that we perform in Android app or computer science in general. So the first one, we call it as synchronous operation. So what is synchronous operation? Now they block the main thread until that operation is complete. So when you launch an app or any software in your device, it has different threads associated with it. The default thread is called the main thread. Now, the main thread responsibility is only to render the UI components. That's it. It's just like you imagine a painter. The painter would be just drawing stuff on the canvas, and that's it. The main thread's job should be that only. It should not indulge itself in network operations or other operations like downloading and all of those things. The second variant of operation is asynchronous operation. Now, what that means is they do not block the main thread when they are doing all of those operations. So, for example, you're playing a music and then you are minimizing the music player app and then opening a internet browser app. The music continues to play in the background, right? So that's an example of an async operation. It does not block the main thread. So something to keep in mind is both sync and async operations leverage only one thread without blocking the main thread. If you block the main thread, you would be seeing your app becoming slow. That's why time and again, like you would be downloading an app from Play Store, and it would be horribly slow when you're trying to log in, or maybe it would be stuck, and then you have to close the app, and then you have to relaunch it, and all of those things. Now, the third aspect is multi-threading. So this utilizes the different CPU cores which you have in a device. Oops, let me reshare my slide. Yeah. So multi-threading is all about utilizing the different cores which you have for the actual CPU. So it is dependent on the type of hardware which you have for the smartphone or your computer. So like over the course of time, there are different aspects of computer science operations that needs to be performed using multiple threads. But as an engineer, you have to be absolutely having a good understanding on how to handle those multi-threading aspects. So there are certain pitfalls for multi-threading. Now, number one is threads are expensive. As I said, like it depends upon the actual CPU cores or the hardware which you have, and expensive in the sense, right? If you utilize all of the CPU cores, your smartphone will not be able to do other important operations. Like for example, you are building an Instagram app, and if you use all of the CPU cores just to make that social media post, and your mom is calling, and the phone app or the call app itself is not responding on your smartphone app, right? So that is not an efficient design as a software engineer. So that's why threads are expensive. Threads are limited, yes, because it is a hardware related stuff. Hardware cannot be infinite, so that's why it is very limited. It is also platform dependent. For example, like there are different smartphone manufacturers. There's Huawei, and then there's Xiaomi, and all of those things. So all of them have their own limitations on how they design their cores. So in order to overcome all of those pitfalls, we use coroutines in Kotlin, and that is what the sample app code is using. So this particular line is called a coroutine, and it uses a dispatcher.io, meaning it uses the IO channel in order to perform the background operations. So it's more of like an async operation. For folks who are curious on learning more about coroutines, they can just Google Kotlin coroutines, and you would be finding more information there. All right, so let's take a look at the final set of slides which I have. It's more of like from a philosophy perspective, how generative AI is transforming the way how we interact with technology. Now, something which is forecasted to happen in the next 5 years is that generative AI would be transforming every single industry out there, whether it is retail, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, and all of those things. And you would be seeing tons of jobs leveraging all of these particular generative AI aspects. For example, like clinical trial, consumer interactions, new product development, and all of those things. Like you name it, you would be finding different aspects of generative AI being used in that particular sector or that particular job role. Uh, so like a business house would be having different aspects associated to it. For example, supply chain, logistics, customer service, finance, and everything. All of these sectors in a particular business would be having individuals who are trained on AI, and they would be using Gemini AI or other AI models out there, and using prompt engineering at the heart of it in order to accelerate their development or accelerate their operations. So it would be in forms of the roles would be in forms of analyst, customer service, creative, developers, and there would be new roles coming up as like AI experts, AI engineers, and all of those things. These would be the multimodal aspect of it, like you can use videos, images, audio, and music in order to interact with AI and generate content for it, and all of those things. It will definitely open the world for new opportunities. It's definitely, I would say, a very trying and demanding time for all of us, where all of us are trying to navigate around this AI revolution, including myself. I'm trying my best to learn every day about how AI is changing, because there's something or the other coming up every single day, which is new. And as an engineer, we can just do our best in order to navigate while continuously learning throughout our lives. All right, so I have got a reference for the official samples for building Gemini related API or building Android apps using Gemini related API. So that is called Gemini Cookbook. And here's the link over here. I can share this slide later on with the organizers as well. And I guess they can also share it with the attendees. Now, this Medium article, I wrote it myself. I wrote it back when I was giving a talk last month in Michigan, and it was about making the workforce in your organization or your community ready for generative AI. So if you go to medium.com and then follow my handle, that which is at saga.das, you can find different aspects in this article. I talk about if you are an AI enthusiast but you are struggling on how to recommend the usage of AI to your boss or to your manager or to your director or to your product manager. You can follow some very simple steps in order to build an experiment, and then share the results, and then promote the growth of AI related opportunities in your organization or in your community. Lastly, this is the official resource for learning more on the Gemini template and the Android Studio. It is continuously evolving, so feel free to visit this particular URL every single day. Google does an excellent job in providing new resources every single day when it comes to Gemini and all of those things. And yeah, that's about it. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Here's my handle and is the QR code. I love writing blogs mostly related to performance engineering or AI related aspects. So find me on Medium. And we do have a YouTube channel for our Boston Android group, which is the GDG group. So you'd be finding much more in-depth videos on Android app development, Compose, and all of those things. So yeah, it was a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you so much. And
Thank you
yeah,
so much,
I
Sagar.
see. Yeah.
That was a lot
So
to squeeze in under 25 minutes. I would have to give you kudos for that. Okay.
okay.
Yeah, thank
Are
you
there any
so much.
questions?
Uh Let me check the Q&A section. Okay. All right. So
Okay. So
I have one question. And so the question is regarding prompt engineering. And so it's basically you spoke about different context in order for you to be able to craft a prompt. So I would like to ask, when it has to do with not particularly to Android development, what are some other ways can you say would be helpful in creating a prompt that is grounded and would also not help you sound like you are like a machine? You know, most times they tell you that some certain words that just spikes up that this is actually from an AI. So how do you go about that?
yeah, that's a very good question. So let me share a useful URL which I discovered a couple of weeks ago. So it talks about like different prompt engineering techniques out there. And if I remember correctly, it's called prompt chaining. Now, prompt chaining actually takes care of the scenario which you mentioned just now. Like, how do we keep the AI model grounded, and uh, how do we provide it like better uh, iterative way of responses to make it sound much more useful? Let me find that URL. So it was, let me just give me a moment. I think it was this one. Yeah, I think it was this one. Hold on. Yeah, promptingguide.ai. So over here in this URL, if you visit here, it talks about like there are different techniques for designing those prompts, like uh, yeah, chain of thought prompting, prompt chaining, tree of thoughts, and all of those things. So
Okay.
each technique would actually provide you different aspects of how to build those prompts layer by layer. So
Hmm.
I mean, this URL does actually a better job than I would do, because this provides all of those mathematical analysis as well. It would be providing you those scores, how it compares against human beings, the responses, and all of those things. So I hope this URL helps.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you so
you're
much,
welcome.
Sagar. Thank you so much, Bushi. It was so nice having both of you here. I don't know if Bushi can turn on that camera so we see her face one more time. Bushi, are you there? Okay. I think maybe she's a bit far from our screen. Okay. Oh, she's here.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I was appreciating you and Saga for taking out your time to be with us here today. It was an amazing section. And we also have the sessions recorded. And once it's up, we're going to be sharing it with attendees because there's a lot that we can get from this. So once again, thank you. The GDG Worry Group is grateful for taking out time to come and share your insights with us. So for the attendees, if they have more questions, they can find you on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I'm very sure they have access to that. We'll still share them as well too. So you can ask Saga or Bushi any questions you have about prompt engineering or how to get your Gemini API queue. Any questions you have, you can reach out to them. So once again, thank you. And so for final updates, we already shared the access to how to get your cloud credits. We're still going to share it with the attendees with the follow up mail we'll send. So if you missed it when we shared it during the session, we'll share it once again. So for everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for taking out the time. I believe you've been able to get one or two things about how to build with AI and how you can also use Gemini as well too. If we have more information, we're also going to share it with everyone. So thank you. Have a good evening and have a good weekend as well too.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.